Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a really cool episode today because one of my favorite guests that we've ever had was Alex Roy. Cannonball Run record holder at one point. I don't think he holds it now, but in a normal Cannonball Run, which is like the Burt Reynolds, starting in New York, ending in LA, driving as fast as you can and avoiding the cops. But now he's done something different.
Yeah, and this is actually a new record, which is the FSD drive coast to coast, which he did in 45 hours, 36 minutes. That's including 5 hours worth of charge time.
And it's extra special because you and I were with him the night that he left New York.
Yeah, and he swore us to secrecy, but he was all pumped up with his lovely co-driver who is going incognito mostly.
Yes.
But that was very cool. I mean, I just can't imagine going out the night before the morning you're going to set off and just drive for days.
Yeah. And by the way, so I've met Alex before, but only briefly. But I've been following him forever. He's also like, both he and Carrie, when I met them at the Classic Car Club, when you meet someone and you feel like you have been best friends forever, I instantly had that.
And the New Yorker in me, of course, when I meet people like that, I'm just like, well, we'll see. We'll see. Like, I can feel it that I really like them and they feel very copacetic and simpatico, but I'm always just like, we'll see. But no, there's no other shoe dropping. It's authentic, it's genuine, it's very nice. And I've known Alex for a long time, and he's one of those people that you don't try to stay in contact with, you just are in contact with. And then you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I've known him for, 10, 12 years.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm from Ohio, so there's no skepticism in me. And like when I met Carrie, we both have lived in Berlin for a long time. We're both fairly new parents. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have so many things in common that I was like, wow, we should go have dinner. So it was great. And I'm really glad we were a part of their trip, of their journey. Let's get into our interview with Alex Roy. I'm so glad you could join us.
We need to celebrate. This is a celebration, really.
Yeah.
Because the last time we saw you, Alex,
you were leaving.
You were. Yeah. It was the night before, the morning of.
Oh yeah.
And we were sworn to secrecy about what you were about to undertake.
So I am a firm believer that one should keep these things a secret for a long time after one does it, or at least a little bit of time, because there's always someone out there who feels super competitive, who might want to sabotage the drive. This is less of an issue with electric and autonomous drives because they're slower. But there was a time when people who did cannonball drives would call in the police and call in other cars.
Wow,
and
dirty.
It got pretty hairy. Yeah, it was dirty. That's not the case anymore. But still, you never know what's going to happen.
Wait, so first of all, I knew about this, but I host a daily television show. And so every day when there was something, there's often news about Tesla, for example. It was hard for me to keep my mouth shut until you finally released the results on your LinkedIn page. And then I talked about every day for a week. So I kept steering people towards your LinkedIn page. Summarize for us exactly what you did.
Okay. So, the Cannonball Run is a historical legacy, American car culture. People drive cross country as fast as possible. But it's always been done as fast as possible. And with the advent of driver assistance systems and now autonomous vehicles, it becomes a lot more interesting to try stuff that hasn't been done before. Notably, how fast can you get a vehicle cross country that is semi-autonomous or autonomous? And so Elon Musk said, I think it was 8 or 9 years ago, that it would be possible to summon your vehicle, your Tesla, cross country. It would just come to you. And no one had tried it before, to the best of my knowledge, under cannonball conditions, meaning nonstop except for charging your gas. And so I'm like, why not do that? And so in late December, on a date I shall not yet, well, everybody knows it was late December, I went cross country with my co-driver, C Fox, whose identity is still not public, but she
We
likes
have
to keep
met
it
her.
that way
She's
for
lovely.
professional purposes.
I mean, there are pictures of her
she's-
on your site.
Yes, she. Let's just say her name is C Fox,
A former
And so,
Porsche executive, as you put it, I
Yes.
believe, on your LinkedIn page.
But look, hey, look. Her name is Carrie Schuler, and she used to work for Porsche. She's great. She's been in fashion. She was a stylist, but most importantly, Tesla owner, and I think 8 or 10 years living in Germany, high-speed driving experience. She's been to racing school. She's one of a kind. So we went across and tried to come up with a rule set that ported kind of cannonball history to autonomous driving. And the rules are no stopping except to charge. And since the metrics aren't top speed, the metrics are how close to 100% autonomous driving can we get. That's the goal. And that's the bar. Whatever we do is the bar. And then in the future, as future software iterations come from Tesla, or a competitor comes out with a vehicle that is capable of doing something similar, people now have a way of measuring both the quality and the capability of an autonomous driving system. And so I kind of humorously call this the Cannonball Run the Nürburgring of autonomy.
It's a benchmark.
It's a benchmark. And Hannah, you've driven the Nürburgring, haven't you?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
You've never driven it?
No.
I have driven it.
And did you find that challenging?
I found it very challenging. It was literally 25 years ago, but it was awesome, right? Yeah. I didn't drive it.
I found it terrifying.
I didn't drive it as fast as I could because I was scared that I would crash.
We're in the same boat. I went for the first time last year, and I was suddenly I got it. Like the car makers take their cars there as fast as they can because they know most people will never drive that fast there, but that the potential, like the potentiality and of what your car could do if you wanted to, lives in the minds of everyone who buys a sports car. And so, what if we took the Nürburgring and did it for autonomy? And that's the Cannonball Run. So we got cross country in 45 hours and 36 minutes.
Was it New York to Phoenix or New York to LA, or what did you?
No, New York to LA, which is the classic Cannonball Run.
Where in LA?
And
just so we have specifics for the Angelinos.
So the finish line is the Portofino Inn, and which is just south of LA, and the start line is the Red Ball Garage in Midtown Manhattan. And so actually 45:36 is pretty good, would be pretty good even for like 100% human driven time. It was a little less than 6 hours of charge time, so 39:44 drive time, which is actually a really good time.
What's your fastest time ever, Alex?
My fastest time is 31 hours and 4 minutes in a BMW M5. I mean, the current Cannonball record, internal combustion, I think it's like 25 and change.
That is wild.
Jesus, who has
Arnie
that?
Tillman, yeah. Oh, my buddy Arnie Tillman. He went across during the COVID lockdowns, and I don't know if that'll ever be beaten. But I have predicted years ago that someday an electric vehicle would break the gas time. Because if you look at the rate of improvement of electric vehicle technology, it looks like the lines will cross in the next, I think, 10 years. And then after that, autonomous driving. Eventually, I'm certain that a 100% driverless vehicle, could be electric, will break Arnie Tillman's time of 25 hours and change. I'm convinced of it. Because eventually, and this is where this is all going, when the technology is capable of driving safer than a human in most conditions, eventually you'll be able to raise the speed limit of that vehicle in the software, and then it'll break the human record. That's inevitable.
I don't want to get too drawn off on a tangent, but aren't we already there that the technology is safer than humans? Like, aren't there driverless taxis in
Waymos.
San Francisco and Phoenix, and that just don't crash very much?
Well, I ride Waymos every day. I live in Scottsdale, and they're terrific. Waymo has released data indicating that they are, well, and this depends on how you measure it, that they are safer than the average human driver where they operate. But where they operate is the key phrase here, because at highway speeds in bad weather, things get more complicated. We've not yet seen any driverless vehicle operate in those conditions, for a lot of miles, and they're not available to the public yet anyway. So they're being tested. So I'm confident, based on Waymo's progress, that they will eventually do highway speeds in all conditions, but they do not yet offer commercial service that goes, outside of an urban area like Scottsdale like Phoenix Metro and San Francisco. Eventually, they will, and so will everybody who wants to be in this business. You have to, because if you want to sell, I think, a car to someone in 25 years, it's going to have autonomous capabilities, driverless capabilities. It's not going to be restricted to fleets. And people like to go on vacation.
And you're making a distinction between autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, because I think oftentimes those are just lumped together as if you have one, you have the other. But it sounds like there's a specific separation in your mind between the two.
So there was a time when, consultants years ago said that the future of all cars was CASE, connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. And I said then, I'm like, that's insane. Americans don't really like sharing. Many of them don't want an electric car. Connectivity, well, I think if you have a red state, people own guns, they don't want to be connected. They want their privacy. And and autonomous. Well, I think a lot of people will want a choice. I like to say that I'm pro-choice in the war on driving. So I like to have an autonomous vehicle.
Put that on a T-shirt.
That has a steering wheel. Yeah, actually it is. It's on the Human Driving Association T-shirts. I sell those. But, I think the distinction between electric and internal combustion is more of a political one, because there are countries like China where I think 100% of cars sold will be electric within a few years. And Norway, it's I don't know. Do you know what Hannah, do you know?
It's close.
No, but it's hot. It's Tesla's biggest market, or it was forever.
Yeah. And so, but with the recent election in the U.S., I think we're going to see gas and hybrids have a new lease on life. So, but there is a weird thing about internal combustion cars and autonomy, because autonomous driving software is generally very smooth. The best systems are quite smooth. Sometimes the vehicles, I don't want to name names, gas vehicles or hybrid vehicles that have suboptimal transmission.
You can name names. I mean, I don't think
uncomfortable.
anyone listens to this, so you can name names if you want. It'll stay with us.
All right. So back in the day, this is 7-8 years ago, I tested a Mercedes E-Class, which is a great car. But when you used its Drive Pilot system, which was like their first generation driver assistance software, the band in which it operated interacted with the transmission shift points in such a way that it was really uncomfortable to use it. And I was like, wow, I wish this car had been electric, because then you have the linear power of the electric drivetrain and the linear performance of the driver assistance. And so, I mean, I think it's inevitable all vehicles will be electric, but how long that takes is a political situation.
I just want to tell you that ChatGPT tells me in Norway, 96.4% of all new cars registered last year were fully electric, battery electric vehicles, and they cite electrive.com as their source. So
Thank you. That's good info.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with ChatGPT. By the way, what's the difference between autonomous and semi-autonomous and fully autonomous? Like, I'm in a
FSD is not FSD.
I'm in a GMC Yukon Denali Ultimate right now, and it's got Super Cruise, which is really cool, but it obviously doesn't take me, on and off the highway from my house to the grocery store kind of thing.
Well, this is a semantic problem, because for a long time, self-driving meant, if you go to India, a self-driving car is a taxi with a human driver, because you don't have to do the driving. And so for many years, self-driving was a vehicle that was driverless. But then when companies started releasing driver assistance and called it self-driving, it kind of muddied the waters. And Tesla came out with full self-driving, but it still requires a supervisor. And so then, Waymo went from marketing. They had a website called Let's Talk Self-Driving. They switched to Let's Talk Autonomous Driving, because they felt like self-driving had been co-opted and stolen.
Yeah. Yes.
So it sucks. And so, and then autonomous got kind of stolen by companies marketing driver assistance, and so it became a total hot mess. So today, I would argue that if it's capable of driverless operation, you have to just call it driverless, because otherwise it gets thrown in the soup with driver assistance systems. So I would say in a perfect world, autonomous would mean driverless. It doesn't always mean that. So I always use semi as the prefix to distinguish that there's someone in a seat. And to classify this specifically, what we did, Carrie and I call it the production autonomy record, because the Tesla is the only car you can buy which is potentially capable of fully autonomous driverless operation. It isn't yet, but I'm convinced that it will be. And this is coming. And I used to work at a competing company at Argo AI, but I'm convinced that they can. And the only other record that I'm aware that exists in this category would be, this is a wild card, a guy named Jay Roberts, bravest man I know, has a Prius, and he put a device called a Comma AI. Have you heard of Comma?
No.
Nope.
So, but I see that he was one of your witnesses on your run.
Yeah. So George Hotz, who's a very famous hacker, first person to hack a PlayStation and an iPhone. Tesla tried to hire him. He said no. He has a device called the Comma AI unit. It's you pull out your rearview mirror, you stick this thing, which is a cell phone with a connector that sticks where your mirror went, and it connects to the CAN bus of your car with a single cable. And it will basically enable not every car, but many cars to capabilities similar to Tesla Autopilot.
Wow.
So you can now have semi-autonomous features. The Comma unit was reviewed by Consumer Reports years ago, and I think they said it was the best on the market, or second, better than anything else except, I think, Autopilot. And so Jay Roberts put this in his Prius and went across country a few months ago and set a record. I call that I think it's the aftermarket autonomy record.
Now, I know this is a deeply uncool question. I just have to ask really quickly. But is that a legal device, or is it kind of like radar detectors that, really aren't legal, but we can all get them?
So a Comma is,
to the
best of my knowledge, it's completely legal. You can, I think what makes it legal is you buy it but it doesn't come with the software on it, and you have to download the software. So it's like a workaround. There was a funny story years ago where Hotz, I think, went to a party with the head of NHTSA, Mark Rosekind, and they were both in the room together. And Rosekind, it's like, what's it? This guy's here? So you should, in fact, if you want to talk to Rosekind, I know him. I'll get him on your show. I called Rosekind while we were in the car doing this to tell him, and he's like, "This is the craziest thing I've ever heard." Anyway,
but
this
that's
it's a gray area.
So much safer is the thing, Alex. Like, I think a lot of people fear that these vehicles are going to be hitting old women in crosswalks all the time. But the fact is, the autonomous vehicles that are out there right now are just killing far fewer people than the human-driven vehicles that are out there right now.
I wouldn't say all autonomous vehicles are safer, but I would say that the cutting edge, like a Waymo, is. And I have been in some systems in other countries that I was not convinced that they should be on the road. And the thing about a system like Tesla's is that it still requires a human supervisor. So if that supervisor is a bad human driver, they're going to be a bad supervisor. And then they may not catch a mistake the vehicle makes. And a lot of Tesla crashes are classified as human responsible crashes, like the supervisor responsible. But that's a gray area, because the relationship between the handoff when the system's on and then the person takes over, it's not always so cut and dry. So I'm a firm believer in Waymo today, and I'm optimistic about Tesla in the future.
Can I ask if you've heard from Tesla about this endeavor? Were they aware of it beforehand even? Have they reached out after? And has Elon made contact?
So
because it's great research.
This time, all right. So this time out, I have not heard from Tesla officially directly. 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, and 8 years ago, when I went across country in a Model S and set the full-on electric cannonball record, Tesla I received emails from people inside Tesla that said, "This is great," and a lot of the Tesla influencer community were super positive about what we just did. The answer is no, they did not reach out. But I know they're watching, and they are friendly and supportive. Like when I get my Tesla serviced, incredibly, I have a great experience. And I know that's not the common experience. And so I suspect that they
You've been
know.
flagged. You've been flagged.
I never ask for anything, and I never, I don't make demands. But they've been good to me. I hope that is true for more people.
So you start at the Red Ball Garage here in New York, and do you start out with your hands on the wheels and your feet on the pedals, or how often did you actually have to touch the wheel, and in what situations did you have to take over?
So there are Tesla influencers who make videos where they sit with their hands like this, or on their legs. I follow the best practices that Waymo and the other big players have adopted after years of testing testing such cars. So hands hovering right behind the wheel 99% of the time, because if something should go wrong, you might have less than a second to react. And if your hands are in your lap, you're not going to be able to react. So when we first started, we had to, that was Tesla FSD software version 12.564, late December. So at that point, you had to actually, the car had to be, you could not engage FSD from a stop from in front of the garage where we were. So we had to pull out in the street, engage it with a button, and then hands hovering near the wheel. The total disengagements between New York and LA were 32, but 21 of those were what we call voluntary disengagements that we had to do in order to get the car into a charging stall to charge it. So that leaves 11 that were non-charging related. Of those 11, only 2 were the really bad kind, which is what you call an involuntary disengagement. And that is when you're the car is driving, you're supervising, and without any warning, it suddenly says, take over now. It flashes red, alerts go off. That happened twice for reasons that are unclear. Software fault, we don't know. And then there were 2 that voluntary takeovers for the car making a navigation error. And on 2 occasions, we had to reboot the system software while driving. Once while driving, once while stopped, which is something also suboptimal. So the metrics that matter are engagement rate and number of involuntary disengagements. And the total engagement rate was 98.52%, which is a very good number. And I think that you will see that creep up towards 100 in the next couple of years. And obviously for that to occur, the disengagement rate will have to fall to 0. And I'm convinced it will.
But that means of the 36 hours and change, for most of that, the car was driving itself, like 35 hours and 45 minutes or something.
Well, yeah, actually it's more than that. The drive time was 39:44. So I don't have the number off the top of my head. It was doing the driving with us supervising, something like into 39 hours and change, which it's incredible.
It is incredible.
And I see in the metrics here that the average driving speed was 71 miles per hour, which is great.
That's
you
great.
had 21 charge stops for a total of 5 hours, 52 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then I see also you say there's other errors 1. So what was that?
I'm trying to remember which one that was.
And I'm looking at what you posted on X, the long article that you wrote about with all of the metrics.
Yeah, so if I remember that correctly, the vehicle made, all right, so I think there were 3 navigation errors, but in 2 cases we took over, and in 1 case we let it play out. To be specific, the vehicle, when leaving a charging station, doesn't always get back to the highway as directly. And so in 1 case, and that's the one outlier, the other error, I think it made a left instead of a right, which would have added 10 or 12 minutes to the overall time. And I think we let it just play out. I think we just let it go to see what would happen. The two system resets were the weird ones because most people would not feel comfortable rebooting a car while in motion. So we did it once. I've done it many times over the course of many years of Tesla ownership. We did it once in motion, and the second time we were at a charging stop, and we could see on the navigation screen that it was not going to navigate out correctly, and so we just rebooted to see what would happen. I mean, it's funny because people really want to focus on this particular thing, and yet anyone who's ever used a computer knows that over time, all computers have issues. They have issues. I'm surprised that we had so few, and the Tesla's come this far. And I don't consider myself a Tesla fanboy at all. And yet, the improvement over 10 years in Tesla system software is incredible. And when I get into a lot of other OEM vehicles today that are electric, forget the driver assistance and other stuff, just electric cars, software-defined vehicles, being in the zeitgeist, I am shocked at how terrible these systems are and how frequently they crash for basic things. So, not an apologist for Tesla. Optimistic that they will get there. Everyone will eventually.
My focus is on the small amount of charging time, because not only did you drive all the way across the country, if I did that in a gas vehicle, I would definitely spend 10 hours at a gas station just to chill. And also, you're driving at high speeds, so I imagine the battery would be drained more quickly. So I think charging for less than 6 hours seems like a very small amount of time.
It seems small for us as civilian normal people with kids and families and like civilians.
Not Cannonball Run record holders. Okay, fair.
So in Cannonball terms, 6 hours is a glacial. It's like the Pleistocene era, So when I went across in 31 hours back in the day, our target time for refueling was 30 minutes the whole way. And we did it in like 31. No,
across like 2,800 miles, basically.
Yeah, just over 30 minutes. And there are people who've done it with less because they carried more fuel. So we had like 6 gas stops. Now, interesting thing about electric vehicles is that you have to, because charging takes so much longer than refueling, you start thinking like Le Mans team managers, because it's like, okay, do you want to go with like, do you want to charge 100%? Because that would mean like 14 stops. Or are we going to go with a 28 stop strategy, which means charging at 40%? So you have to be looking at the battery chemistry and the exterior temperatures, battery temperatures, and start optimizing for charge rates. And every vehicle has a different charging curve, and the chargers themselves have different charge rates and reliability. Imagine if we went to gas stations today and a Shell station pump at twice the speed of an Exxon. Which one would you go to?
Right.
Yeah. So even though it's only like a minute, it does make a difference. And so that's how chargers are. So there has been for many years, Tesla's dominated Cannonball electric records, because the supercharger network had 99% uptime and the fastest speeds. Electrify America showed up, and they offer higher charging speeds, but only with a couple of cars, like a Lucid or a Porsche Taycan. And so, but their reliability rate is somewhere like 60% versus 99% for Tesla. So this has been game back and forth. People like myself and a friend named Kyle Connor, he's got Out of Spec is his channel. He and I we've had talks in turn, like, well, when will someone that's not Tesla break the record? So he's tried, we've both tried, and he came close in a Taycan once and in a Lucid once. And recently, he broke the EV Cannonball record in a second-gen Taycan. And solely because the charging curve of the new second-gen Taycan battery is faster, it's better than anyone else's. However, there is a trade-off, which is that the range of the car is much shorter. But if you get it just right, you can do it. And I think he did it in like 39 and change, which is 2.5 hours faster than the Tesla record, which had stood for a few years. So the new race in electric vehicles is going to be for how to maintain long range out of the battery while getting those charging curves faster. And the new Taycan and the new Lucids, the latest, they're opposite theories. Lucid is optimizing for maximizing range, and their charging curve is quite good. The Taycan has much less range with a faster curve. So I think we'll see these times fall. Once you get those times from 6 hours in my last drive down to say 3 or 2 or say 1, that's when we're going to start looking. OEMs can start looking at how will they break the internal combustion record. So.
I want to ask you about battery degradation here, and especially as it relates to resale values of Teslas and Taycans and that sort of thing. Is that a valid concern? Because I've been watching the secondary market values of EVs just completely tank. What's your experience with that?
Well, for the average person, it's not an issue because they're leasing or 3 years. Sure. Financing, maybe 5 to 7.
But we want to buy after someone's leased,
Yeah.
Of course. Well, the first generation batteries out of almost everybody were not awesome. 10-year-old Teslas today, Model S's, you can get them for like 25 or 30K. Their range was shorter out of the gate, and it's even shorter now. But they're pretty good values if you are happy getting into like kind of the weird world of non-warranty Teslas. I wouldn't buy probably any old EV except a Tesla, and the Gen 1 Taycans are awesome cars, really well made. The software is a different issue, but everything else about them is great. Matt Farah just bought a Gen 1 Taycan Gran Turismo, which is stunningly beautiful.
The wagon version, they're so hot.
Yeah, but look, once someone else is taking the hit, it's probably a good deal. But the real question is, when will battery chemistry technology improve such that this is not an issue? Because gas cars that are 50 years old can be restored to 100% efficiency. So new chemistries have to come. And there's a few different approaches. We've not yet seen them do what we want. And I think that depreciation is going to be terrible for many years to come. There's a separate reason, and it's why I don't buy used EVs, which is some of them, Tesla, Lucid, Rivian, are software upgradable. Like they probably have a long happy life with improvements to what they can do. Tesla most of all, but Lucid, Rivian right next to them, and so. You want to have the latest hardware because the better hardware is going to mean a longer happy ownership cycle. But if you buy an EV that's from like a legacy OEM, that's like basically you're locked in. The software's never really going to do much more than it does out of the gate. I'm not interested in that. That's why I think you see so few 2 or 3 time owners of EVs. Unless it's Lucid, Rivian, and Tesla, the owners are very loyal. The other ones,
the Porsche, you can't change. I always wonder about battery swaps too. As battery technology gets better and better, can you just pull out an old Taycan battery and put in something that's twice as?
I don't know if Porsche will do it. Tesla will swap. They'll sell you a new battery pack. It's like it's 15, 20 grand, but it could be more. Battery swaps were discussed, and Tesla said they were going to do it. And then in the early days, in fact, they said they were going to do it for, instead of charging, you would just swap batteries. They decided not to continue with that. In China, there are, I don't know who it is, at least one OEM that does battery swaps. I think that's I don't think that's a really viable long-term solution because the infrastructure required,
No, I just mean though, if you buy an old Camaro, that has a little motor and you want to put in a big V8, people do that all the time, right?
You can.
So can you
yes.
eventually do the same thing with electric cars? Can you say, I love the look of the Taycan Gran Turismo, but I don't really love the software and the battery, so I'm going to buy this thing and put in the hot rod version?
Well, the battery and the motors are two different things. Someone could swap the motors, I suppose, but the architecture of these cars, the early ones, is really not designed for changes. Other than battery for service purposes. I think it's early days. Look, the future of hot rodding obviously is kids of the future are not just going to swap out hardware; they're going to know some coding. That's the future of hot rodding. So what you see for ECU, like remapping and people chipping their cars and writing new software, a little bit today. That's going to be, in 50 years, kids are going to they're going to look at this car. I think they're going to look at like an early Lucid and they're going to say, okay, I don't care about destroying my Bradage longevity. I want to dump 4x the power out of this thing into the motor right now. And they're going to hack it and they're going to make that happen. And at that point, the depreciation will have been like 97%, of the value of the car. And they're just not going to care. That's the future. But people forget it'll be decades before the EV, AV car market approaches the maturity of what we've had for 50 years in internal combustion. So it'll get there.
Alex, if you could have one electric car, is there one that you love? Is there an
daily
EV
driver?
that you think about when you go to sleep at night? Like,
no, no, because the selection's so limited today. I mean, I just took delivery of a brand new Model S, which is not as comfortable as a Lucid, and doesn't quite handle like a Taycan, but it does everything else I want. Charging network and the driver assistance software is the best there is.
Well, here's a more of a philosophical question. Why don't we feel an emotional pull to any electric vehicles besides the obvious?
I do.
Ever? Okay.
There is one. The most unbelievable vehicle I ever drove was a Rimac 1, the first
Oh, wow.
Rimac supercar.
That's very
hypercar.
cool. Did you drive that in Croatia?
Yes.
Very cool.
And that was, I went down there with JF Musial, my old buddy. We all know
Of
JF.
course.
Went down there, and was it Croatia? I went down there and I drove that for like 15 minutes alone. And
wow. Mate
I
wasn't
think
with
everyone
you,
was very nervous.
holding your hand?
He wasn't with me. No.
Wow.
And the thing about that car is that there wasn't the level of like sound deadening in the vehicle as you'd find in a lot of luxury cars and sports cars. So you could hear all of the motors and drivetrains. You could hear so much of what was happening underneath you that I felt connected to the car in a different way. Because in almost any internal combustion car, you only hear two things: the engine and wind noise. Whereas in an electric car, you hear road noise, and that's often all you hear. And so the noise levels in that car were the noise was so different from any other car. I felt like I was learning how to drive again.
Wow.
And yeah, I hope.
Sounds like a rebirth, really.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I think that there are like as yet unseen and magical futures for drivers, especially with Mate Rimac being the guy behind both Rimac and now CEO of Bugatti. Is he a friend of yours, Hannah?
I mean, I wouldn't say we're friends. I would love to be friends with him. We're certainly friendly.
wait, what if he's listening and he thinks you're friends?
Well,
then he's going to be dejected.
Then I'm very honored. We're certainly friendly. I really enjoy talking with him.
So I think the most interesting people are like the handful of people in the world who both understand the internal combustion era and have done engineering work in EV, because they understand the psychology of drivers. And, the Tesla fans are really interesting people. The hardcore ones are peculiar because they are so obsessed with Tesla. They obsess over everything, the 0 to 60, and also the driverless stuff. So Tesla, it's like people project onto what they want, but Teslas are weird because they're meant to be super fast and fun to drive, and yet so many people are like, but they'll be driverless soon, which kind of what's the word?
An oxymoron.
It's that cross purposes.
Mutually exclusive.
Half of their appeal. Yeah. So
redundant.
It's the only brand on the planet which allows people to virtue signal and vice signal at the same time. And this is why Tesla has narrative command of the EV and AV, enthusiasts, because anyone can believe what they want because it satisfies both of the needs they project onto the brand. No one else does that. Porsche, in some cases, a little bit comes close with some of the really cool, like hybrid turbo, the top of the line Cayenne and Panamera come close.
All right, that was very cool, and I really do recommend people go back and listen to our original podcast with Alex Roy, because he explained so eloquently the connection that we feel with with cars, especially with internal combustion engines.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Alex is he speaks his mind, and he's driving a Tesla, but he says he's not a fanboy. He's critical. He's self-aware of the benefits and negatives of electric vehicles. He drives an old wooden Morgan, one of those three-wheeled things. The good one. The
previous version with
Correct.
the V-twin on the front.
So I do feel like sometimes when you have people driving electric vehicles, they only drive electric vehicles and they're very, very invested in pushing EVs for the rest of the world all the time. And that is good for them, but it does make me question their independence of thought sometimes.
Yeah.
And Alex is very good about, he dabbles in everything, and he says the positives and negatives.
Actually,
So
the two of you have that kind of integrity gene in common. Like, you cannot be bought. And
No.
I'm think
offended.
I think that's pretty rare, though. I mean,
You've seen me get upset, Matt.
yes, I have. And by the way, I'm surrounded by journalists all the time. But I think it's rare that someone has that much integrity, which I always recognized in you, which is why I love working with you. But Alex, too. And actually, I notice a lot of the full self-driving freaks are like that. It was great to get Alex's take. And
the one thing I wanted to ask, which I purposefully didn't, is what is he working on next? Because he's always cooking something.
Yeah, and he won't tell.
And he won't tell, and he shouldn't.
I wanted to ask, and I still may, I'll call him later. I wonder how he set the speed. Because, when you're driving super fast, and you've always got to kind of regulate that speed in case, a semi in the right lane pulls over.
Sure, yes.
But if it's self-driving, do you just tell the Tesla, like, hey, figure it out. We want to go as fast as we can?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess I assume that it adjusts automatically. It adjusts speed automatically, like cruise control would.
Right, but you just set it as high as it can possibly go, like the cruise control max.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, I guess it's all the more reason to have him on again, because he's going to do this 3 times, right? That was the first run of 3.
I think so.
All right, that's all we have for you this week.
Yeah, thanks for your letters. Email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.